Hello world, welcome to a new video. I am Luis and this channel is Luis of Ecuador, where I tell you things and I try to explain things that are happening in Ecuador, and we discuss a little bit, providing as much content as possible and in a way as less biased as possible. And some of you like watching the videos to know more of Ecuador, more of Cuenca. And that's why sometimes I try to make videos outskirts, outdoors, and in uncommon places like where I am now. This is Cuenca. This is the rural Cuenca. This is the outskirts of Cuenca. This is El Valle. You see behind this big hill here, down, you get to the city. We'll have a short view in a moment. But well, I'm recording this Friday, October 17th, and this video is to talk about two things that have happened or that are happening. One thing is the Paro, the general strike that's going on in Ecuador. And the other thing is the attack that there was in Guayaquil, in the largest city of Ecuador. Before starting, I just want to show you around, because this is a normal street in the outskirts of the city. There are roads, not paved, holes, and it's not actually in the rainy season, so it will get worse by January. And there in the back you see the city of Cuenca. I am in the south of the city. There are many things to improve. Cuenca is a very nice city. It's a beautiful city and has a very good quality of life. For Latin American terms, we are really okay. And even in comparison to other places around the world, in what you would call, or we would call, developed countries. But this is Latin America. There are still many things that have to be improved. And you can see we have a long way to go, but we are going that way. And that's why, if you are interested in knowing more about these things, watching more of this, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, because here you will learn things that you want to learn in other channels. Just in case you wonder and you don't know, well, I am a national tour guide of Ecuador. I run a tour operator. I started it 3 years ago, and that's my main business. But I also assist with relocation, immigration, and translations. I'm a certified translator, and that's how I have learned about the world, through languages, through interacting with cultures, and I like showing around. This is the taxis here in the area, green and white. That's what you would call rural taxis. So Cuenca is just 5 miles away. We can watch it from here. And this is Cuenca. I mean, the mayor of Cuenca is in charge of this area. Hello, dog. But it's the country in terms of culture and activity. But the city is expanding to this area as well. So many things have changed in the last 10, 20 years, a lot. How about my business? If you want to know more about Ecuador as well, you can also subscribe to the other channel, in addition to this, which is Bildev Tours, BILDEV Tours. And in that channel, I don't talk too much about events, news. It's more nature, culture. I add context. I try to explain you things, but like breaking news, that will be here. Okay, let's talk about what is happening. First, the Paro, the general strike, the protests going on in Ecuador, the indigenous protests. At the moment, the Paro is happening, October 17th, Friday. The Paro stopped for only 5 minutes because the government negotiated with some indigenous leaders, but the people of the communities didn't acknowledge these leaders and what they had negotiated. So even though the leaders and the government and the Catholic Church that was mediating, they all were in these dialogues. They agreed to stop the paro, and they announced it in all mainstream media, whatever. It was not true. Outside, in the plazas, in the squares, on the streets of the communities, in the area of Imbabura, Otavalo, they said, no, we don't agree with that. So they simply continue with the paro. And so far, the paro goes on. They had reached an agreement where they would release prisoners, indigenous people they had arrested during the protests, and also that they would not be prosecuted, that the soldiers that are in the indigenous areas would leave right away. They had agreed to all of that. But there have been 2 deceased people during the protest, due to the protests. Efraín Fuertes from the Cuicocha area, in Cotacachi, and another man, I can't really recall his name, but he passed away 2 days ago. He was shot. Then there are videos around where you can see the bullet impact here. And well, they took him to the hospital, but he didn't survive. And this was bullets from the soldiers, from the military. And people are really angry in the indigenous communities. People are angry in other parts of the country. And this is a very, very complicated situation because, one moment, look at this. This is the parish of El Valle, the valley, because we have like a small valley here. It's the rural parish that is the most populated. In Ecuador, we are divided by provinces, not states, and the provinces are divided by cantones, would be like counties, municipalities, and the cantones are divided in parroquias, which comes from the Spanish tradition, parishes. This is the parish of El Valle, which is the most populated of the parishes. Okay, I was telling you that even I am also angry at how the government has been acting, because in the indigenous communities where they don't have weapons, they don't have guns, they have sent lots of soldiers, they have sent convoys several times, and they have attacked, firstly, the indigenous communities.
¿Te pisaron o no?
No.
Graba.
Sí.
Graba, ¿cómo le golpean?
Le atraparon, ¿ves?
¿Cómo le atraparon?
Mira cómo le...
Le están golpeando.
A un joven de Rumipamba. Sí.
Nos están atacando a la gente. La comunidad ha sido totalmente atacada con gases. Ustedes pueden observar, estamos siendo atacados. Que quede constancia de este gobierno represor y terrorista.
The indigenous people that are organizing the paro, they have not acted in the best way either.
En Otavalo, Imbabura, las protestas se radicalizan en el 11º día del paro. A los habituales bloqueos en la Panamericana Norte que se dan desde el inicio de las movilizaciones, se sumaron cierres dentro de la ciudad. Manifestantes encendieron hogueras y colocaron piedras para impedir el paso de los pocos vehículos que todavía circulaban. Grupos de encapuchados obligaron a cerrar locales comerciales y pincharon con puntas afiladas los neumáticos de bicicletas y motocicletas que circulaban por la ciudad. En uno de los bloqueos hirieron en el pie a una mujer. Esta ciudad se ha convertido en el epicentro de las manifestaciones. Con cerca de 42.000 habitantes, el 67% indígena según el último censo. Está a 2 horas de Quito y media hora de Ibarra y otras ciudades del norte del país. Por su situación geográfica, la Estatal 35 pasa por los accesos sur y norte en los que hay bloqueos con volquetas de tierra, piedras y llantas quemadas, y en los que se concentran manifestantes. Los bloqueos empiezan kilómetros antes de la ciudad. Al sur, los más fuertes están en González Suárez, San Rafael de la Laguna y Eugenio Espejo, y en el norte, en las entradas a Peguche, Ilumán y Carabuela. El paso es totalmente prohibido. Los conductores de las ambulancias enseñan banderas blancas para evitar ser atacados. Después de una revisión para constatar la emergencia, su paso es autorizado, pero hay casos en los que se les impide circular. Los bloqueos, según el gobierno, han provocado una situación de escasez de insumos en su hospital.
25 días del paro en Imbabura han alterado por completo la rutina de sus cerca de 450.000 habitantes. Otavalo, Cotacachi y Antonio Ante son las zonas más afectadas. En estas localidades, a punta de fuerza y amenazas, los manifestantes impiden la libre movilidad, el abastecimiento de productos y el desarrollo del comercio. Mientras la educación se detiene, los padres tampoco pueden salir a trabajar. La circulación vehicular es mínima. Los conductores temen que les pinchen las llantas o les quemen los vehículos. Al mismo tiempo, las perchas de las tiendas y supermercados se quedan vacías. En Antonio Ante, por ejemplo, los comerciantes ya no salen a vender sus productos. Las estanterías de los 2 supermercados más grandes del cantón lucen desabastecidas. No hay carnes, pollos, lácteos ni huevos.
Todos los locales están cerrados, las industrias están cerradas, no se puede trabajar, como le digo, no se puede realizar ninguna actividad operativa. Los manifestantes no lo permiten, su agresividad ha hecho que los empresarios caigan en un pánico, en un miedo.
La provincia de Imbabura continúa aislada por el paro indígena que este jueves cumplió 25 días. Según el sistema ECU 911, en toda la provincia existen 15 cierres viales. Uno de ellos persiste en el sector de Rumipamba, de la parroquia La Esperanza, sur del cantón Ibarra. Piedras, montículos de tierra y troncos obstaculizan la vía Ibarra-Zuleta-Olmedo, que comunica a Imbabura con Pichincha. La vía antigua a Cotacachi también está bloqueada por manifestantes. En el sector del puente sobre el río Ambi, decenas de vehículos están varados en la zona, porque un grupo de indígenas realiza requisas y determina quién puede ingresar a la zona urbana.
Las personas que estén llevando alimento no les van a dejar entrar. Solo las personas que no tengan nada de alimento o nada de mercadería, nada de nada, podrán pasar. Que prefieren que el pueblo se muera de hambre, así es que no se suman al paro.
En el tramo de la Panamericana desde Ibarra hasta Atuntaqui, cabecera cantonal de Antonio Ante, hay presencia policial para evitar nuevos bloqueos. En esa zona, algunos comerciantes han vuelto a abrir sus negocios, con cierto temor y con pocos visitantes.
Pedimos ayuda a la policía que no nos dejen abandonados porque sí se siente temor por las amenazas que hay de la gente.
También se observan buses y taxis circulando por esta carretera, que intenta volver a la normalidad. Sin embargo, la movilidad se vuelve a cortar en San Roque, donde los manifestantes no han depuesto la medida, pese a los acuerdos de sus dirigentes con el gobierno. El mismo panorama se registra en Pinzaquí, Ilumán y Peguche, al norte de Otavalo.
So it's difficult for me to say just that I support indigenous people just because it's not exactly like that. I work in tourism. There are indigenous people working in tourism that don't agree with the paro, but they are forced to close because the indigenous peoples work like that. In one area where people voted in the national level, we have to go to paro, then the leaders say we have to go to paro, the whole community has to go to paro. Even if you don't agree to go to paro, you have to join the paro, otherwise the indigenous leaders will force you to close your store, to close your shop. And that has been seen. People have closed the stores. The indigenous organizations in these areas, they close the roads with trunks, with rocks, with tires, whatever. And it is in several areas. Remember, these areas are populated by indigenous, at least in 50% of their population. And they have these traditions that come from centuries. And they are fighting for something they really think is for the general well-being. At this moment, one of the main things is the subsidies to diesel. They want the subsidies to diesel to be returned because the president eliminated them. Everything will go up, yes, so they want people to join the paro. On the other hand, the government has not helped because the government has called these people terrorists because they are threatening the population, they're forcing them to close, they're not letting them work, they are blocking the goods, all the merchandise to go to the supermarkets, to the pharmacies in these areas. So the situation is very complicated in the north of the country, in Imbabura and Carchi provinces, but mainly in Imbabura, where the Otavalo people and the Caranqui people are. They are very organized and they are very fierce, and the government doesn't understand that because the government, instead of calling to real mediation, they are just, these people are terrorists, these people are bad, look what these people are doing. And they are putting all of this propaganda in the media, like saying we're the good, these indigenous people are the bad, and they only want subsidies, they want everything for free, and they're lazy. And people repeat that speech in the cities, and people who support the government. And these are people that don't even know how to work in the country. They couldn't stand more than 1 day working there because this is really hard work. So certainly these people are not lazy. The situation is complicated. But what has annoyed people the most, that's what I was saying, even me, is that they have attacked the rural communities with lots of soldiers. The thing is that we see the state has this power, the government has this power, but in the areas where you need this, you don't have that level of intervention. You don't have this type of attacks. Now there have been 2 indigenous men dead in the hands of the soldiers. Last week, the president even said, when he was coming to Cuenca, that there was an assassination attempt on him. This was 1 hour and a half north of Cuenca. His car was coming with other cars. He has an armored car. But people in the community, in an indigenous community, he was passing by this community where he knew he was not going to be welcomed, and they threw rocks at the car, at the whole convoy. And then they said this was an assassination attempt to the president. They arrested some people, but this was provocation because he was not being welcomed there. The government has just saying these people are bad, these people are terrorists, these people are lazy, they don't let people work. So how do you expect you would be welcomed there? Then he came to Cuenca and kept his speech that he was trying to be stopped, or he's trying to be stopped by the mafias, blah, and he's comparing the indigenous people on the countryside to the mafias in the big cities. So this is not helping at all. At the moment, some people say that the Paro may continue until the Sunday, and then there will be like a truce. I don't know if that will happen, because you can't believe everything from the general media, because even in the communities, there are people against the leaders. That's what happened. They said Paro will stop. Paro didn't stop. They have arrested indigenous people. They have cut in their hair, which is symbol of their identity. This is a type of psychological punishment. They have arrested people in the indigenous areas and taken them to prisons where they had killed people recently in riots. And that is even illegal. Of course, it is illegal to allow that in the prisons, but, the level of the control of the government is not what they claim. But the thing is that one of the courts ordered the government to return the indigenous people to their areas, not like release them, but to process them in their areas, because by law, indigenous people cannot be taken out of their community area or the areas where their culture is. But the government didn't comply with that until these negotiations happened. And it's a kind of psychological torture as well. If you keep protesting, if you keep blocking the roads, you're going to be taken to the hard prisons. There are many things that the government is doing in a way that you cannot simply say, no, I support the government because we have to work and the subsidies are bad, because the subsidies are not good. But, many people I know are like me in that way. You cannot support the blockades because they affect us, they harm us a lot. People are not coming, they don't want to come. I'm talking about the tourism sector here. But many industries stop. People cannot work. People who have loans, who have to pay their debts, they cannot work. This is a mess in those areas. Here in Cuenca, the movement is normal. Actually, in most of the country, movement is normal. The hard situation is in the north of the country. But, I cannot support the government either, because they are not acting well. They don't want to acknowledge the legitimate protests. And they are acting in a way that they should act with the real criminals, and they are not doing so. And that's where my second part of the video starts. Tuesday evening, 6:30 p.m. in Guayaquil City, the main port of Ecuador, the most populated city, there was a car that exploded. This was an attack made by gangs, according to the government, to Los Lobos. They are already named by the government as a terrorist group. Why? Because they are terrorizing people. What is their purpose? They control drug trafficking, extortions, kidnappings, lots of criminal activities. What for? This is just for the money. It's not like Middle East or in other parts of the world where they have a purpose of religion, independence. No. This is like what has happened in Colombia and Mexico for many years. Now it is happening in Ecuador. And many of the people within these things are from Colombia. And the criminals here, they are tied to the Colombian and Mexican organizations. We are talking about strong ties to the carteles. And these people are getting wilder. Why? Because the government has really done something. That's true. The government is acting in a way that is affecting their economies. First, they're seizing more drugs. And second, they're attacking the business that has given them more money than the drug trafficking, which is illegal mining. Illegal mining is giving thousands of millions of dollars at the moment, like about 2,000 millions of dollars, something like that, which is a lot for a small country like Ecuador. So you can imagine how many people they are recruiting with that money. It's a lot of money. Drug has been affected not only because of the government, but also because of international cooperation, like the US. The US is making a lot of watch on the Pacific Ocean, where the routes are. El Salvador is helping. So the business is being affected a lot. Illegal mining was working a lot, and the gangs, the mafias, were taking several territories throughout the country, like since 2017. And now that the government is trying to gain that back, it's not an easy struggle. Last week, they exploded one camp, one base, and what they call like the entrances to the mines.
500 militares del Ejército y la Fuerza Aérea ejecutaron el operativo contra la minería ilegal en Buenos Aires, Cantón Urcuquí, provincia de Imbabura. Los uniformados coordinaron bombardeos controlados y el lanzamiento de decenas de proyectiles utilizando morteros sobre los sectores de Mina Nueva, Mina Vieja y El Olivo, donde operan bocaminas ilegales.
Bueno, hemos empleado armamento, helicópteros con armamento calibre .50, el cual nos ha permitido a nosotros realizar un ataque sobre un objetivo militar.
Un helicóptero artillado y el avión supertucano participaron en los ataques para destruir estructuras subterráneas, túneles y campamentos usados por mineros ilegales. Antes del bombardeo, las autoridades evacuaron a los civiles para evitar víctimas.
They exploded all of that in Buenos Aires, Imbabura, the same province where people are protesting. But this is not indigenous territory. This is in another area. The thing is that the government, in a way, is even wanting to connect the indigenous protests to the mafia, saying that they are being funded by them.
El ministro de Defensa y el jefe del Comando Conjunto estuvieron en el operativo. El ministro advirtió que la minería ilegal no solo depreda el ambiente, también financia estructuras criminales.
¿Creen que tiene conexión esto con las paralizaciones? Bueno, es muy probable que dinero de esta actividad ilegal esté financiando a muchos de estos grupos, sobre todo los violentos.
El área afectada de aproximadamente 4.000 hectáreas permanece cercada por las Fuerzas Armadas para impedir el retorno de los mineros ilegales.
I cannot say that's not true, but certainly what I can tell is that most of the indigenous people, like more than 95% of the indigenous people are protesting because they believe in what they're fighting for. They're not doing this because they're being paid. They protest because they believe they will have a better country with a better government that listens. And this area, Buenos Aires, in Imbabura province, was exploded in the illegal mining area and taken by the soldiers all around. Then this attack in Guayaquil happened like 2-3 days later. Not only in Guayaquil, but also in bridges connecting the coastal region with the Andean region in the south. And the bridges didn't collapse, but they are not in good shape, so they will have to be rebuilt. And now we have to take detours to travel to certain areas if we're going by car. And in Guayaquil, this happened in a very commercial area, like in the financial district of Guayaquil. It's an area that you would have always thought of like a secure area. And there were 2 cars that had explosives on them, but only one exploded and didn't even explode completely as it was intended to, because there were many parts that didn't explode, or many of these devices. According to the government or other experts, the job was not so professional. It's professional, but not super professional. They use devices like what they use in the mining areas, in the legal mining areas, and that's why they tie these to Los Lobos gang. They are being affected, so they want to send this message to the government. It was in front of a Sheraton hotel, but also in front of a building of a holding that belongs to the president's family's corporation, Nobis. And the main president of this organization, the owner, is the president's aunt, but it's like a family business. This is all, plausible. You can really believe this is what's happening because it makes sense. They are being affected a lot. The government is not doing the best job, but at least they're doing something in some areas, and they're attacking mafias. My worry comes when they are attacking the mafias, but they are not controlling the whole of the territory. So some areas are being like left aside. Yes, we attack them here, but in the poor areas of the country where they are recruiting kids, teenagers, and people that are unemployed, they don't do anything. So this can be an never-ending story if we keep like that. The government is getting support from the United States, trying to get support from Israel. I mean, countries that are good with intelligence, that have technology, equipment to fight these groups. I can't tell if they really have a plan that will work. We will see. But it's really, really annoying that they are sending all of this attack to indigenous communities, even to farming areas. In the mainstream media, you don't see all of this, but you see a big part. There's media that is more responsible. Well, with this car that exploded, there was one victim. And maybe there will be more because there were people that were seriously injured, 2 other people. The devices didn't explode completely, and the second car didn't explode, but the idea was to make a big hit. We will see, but I'll let you know of any update. I will post other videos as well about general things about life in Ecuador, in Cuenca. I'm getting downtown, by the way, downtown of El Valle, not downtown of Cuenca. This is the downtown of this parroquia, so there's a lot of movement here. I'm taking a bus here at the bus stop, and with all of this, I think I can end this update. We'll be talking another video. I appreciate you having stayed until this point. Remember to subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you would like to know about. If you have your questions, I take that into account. By the way, someone asked in the comments if the Paro had created greater instability. Not really, because the Paro was or has been mainly in one area of the country. There has been some protests in other parts, blockades in other parts of the country as well, but for a few times. So not really, not in comparison to other areas. And the government has shown they can control things. I mean, they have a lot of equipment and they have a lot of soldiers. So that's what's annoying many people. But like creating greater instability in the country against the fight with the mafias, I wouldn't say so. I wouldn't tell so. And the other thing is, if indigenous people are afraid of being associated with mafias, yes, of course, because the government is doing that sometimes in their speech. But well, see you there. I have to take the bus. And thank you for watching the video until this point. See you in the next video. Remember to subscribe if you want to know more. Bye-bye.